I grew up in Western Sydney, so from a young age, Mum would go shopping in Cabramatta for meat and do her vegetables something else. So it was very multicultural, and I think that's where I've got, that drive to kind of step into where I am in terms of a chef.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Starting your very own restaurant is an exciting, challenging, exhausting, and exhilarating experience. Many in the industry dream of the day they can call a restaurant their own. Having found the location and devised an offering for the local market, you dig your heels in for the first year of trade. But what if the landscape changes? The pandemic forced state governments to close their borders. What of the restaurants on the border of states whose borders are shut, meaning the locals, once relied on, have no means to get to your door? Alex Munoz is the co-owner and chef of Labart restaurant in Burleigh Heads, Queensland. Alex, how are you going?
I'm very well, Anthony. How are you?
Good, mate. Thanks for joining us. You're only 15 minutes from the New South Wales border, and I'm guessing a lot of your clientele come from New South Wales. What's this period of time been like with the borders shut?
Yeah, look. To be honest, I mean, we're like you said, we're only that 15-minute drive just over the Tweed. But the impact for us really, it always could be better, I guess, if those Byron Bay diners can come up and experience the Gold Coast. But yeah, we've seen a massive change, especially starting of winter. I think once everybody was confined into, just surrounding themselves in Queensland, we've seen some real heavy, people come through in terms of, Brisbane diners and people coming from Noosa making their way down. So, generally, I think those people tend to go in the state or bypass Burleigh Heads and head to Byron. But this winter has just been incredible, and I think the support that people have been showing has been amazing. And it really, it's always good to possibly get those people to come over. And I think they've just announced yesterday that it is going to open up, which is fantastic news. Not just for us, just dynamically for the whole state, just to generate a little bit of people coming through. I think it will be a massive boost. Yeah, definitely.
Has this period of time since you reopened the restaurant to having diners inside, has that surprised you, the response that you got from the Queensland public?
Yeah, definitely. We've changed a lot about our business model from takeaway to where we are now. But the theme in Queensland is massively changing rapidly, and people are very supportive in terms of especially what we're doing here on the coast. And even though we are in a smaller city in terms of the Gold Coast, it's still quite quite small, and it's really affected by that trade in the summer trade, having people coming up for holidays. But the response has been awesome. There's still that 1 meter rule that affects us massively in our small restaurant, because we've gone from being a 60-seater to 28 to max 30 if we can, depending on the night. But it's massively restricted. But there's a good handful of people that are really taking this pandemic very serious, and then there's another handful of people that just going about their business. So it's a happy medium to kind of keep everybody happy, and just respect those people that are coming in here and aware of is there sanitation, and we're going through the right process of keeping them safe. And for us, that's super important from day one.
You mentioned earlier that the restaurant's changed quite a bit since that time that you were doing takeaway, but you moved really quickly into takeaway within a matter of days. Can you take us through that process of when the industry got shut down and how you were feeling and what response you did?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was about a week and a half before our first forced shutdown. That's me and Carla. We just my brother-in-law lives in San Francisco, and it only took us to see what was happening around the world for us to make that decision. And a lot of people may have thought that we were crazy because we decided on the Sunday lunch. We finished lunch and we just do lunch on Sundays, and we said, you know what, this is going to get out of hand very quickly, and we need to react like super fast. So, what's the quickest way for us to change our business model to takeaway? So by the following Wednesday, we all came back to work, and yeah, it was rustic food and comfort food at an affordable price as well, because we kind of thought to ourselves, well, if this pandemic's really going to affect the economy, are people going to have enough money to be spending on our normal menus? And also, do we want to tarnish our reputation in such a small period of time? At the time we were about a year and a half, coming up to 2 years, sorry, into our business, and we kind of thought, what's the best way to kind of keep us at the same level where we are, where one day if we were to come back to normality, that we can continue, where we left off. And for us, having the Queensland diners, it was super important that our demographic as well. It's a lot of that older clientele that's retired, and do they want to be coming out to the restaurant, and what's the best way that we can get them food, and do they want to be paying a premium, and all this came into play. And yeah, for us, it just became a no-brainer. First and foremost was our staff, and how can we retain them? Obviously, the casuals were affected massively, and then the government stepped in and helped them out, which was well, is still awesome. But for us, our full kitchen team are all full timers, so a lot of them are married and have kids and that. So, for us, it was super important, not only for myself, but for them to say, hang on here, we actually have to come back to normality one day, and we need a team. And if we start losing all these international chefs, that it's, especially like you look at Sydney, Melbourne, it's like, they've had to just pack up and go home. So to try to reboot your business into finding staff, for us, it was like, no, we need to keep these guys going, and have something to come back to. So the front of staff, I think you can always find people here and there, but in terms of a good quality kitchen team, for Carla and I, it was just super important that we just hang on to these guys and do the best we can to just keep them motivated, keep them busy, and not just sit at home and just look at this pandemic, constantly on TV. So that was a real positive for us in terms of moving forward and just keeping everything as normal.
Your food is certainly not takeaway kind of food ordinarily in the restaurant. So, what sort of food did you do in such a short amount of time and switch to suit a takeaway model?
Yeah, we tried a few different things, and our kitchen is definitely not designed for the masses. Which, when you're trying to do a coq au vin with a reduced red wine sauce for over 100 people, and it's not coming out the way you want it, it's just very frustrating. And when chefs are so pedantic and kind of you need it to be perfect, it just eats you away. But we're doing things like lasagnas and different stews. I think I brought out some stews from my heritage, from my background. Mum was giving me some recipes. Mum was doing some chili and cakes, and kind of just putting that out there, and she was helping out as well.
Wow.
So yeah, which was really cool, and people were actually like responding extremely well. Once the first forced lockdown happened, everybody kind of was knocking at the door, sending emails saying you guys were ahead. And we had other industry people call us and say, how did you attack this? And it was a challenge, but I think that comfort food and the price point that we put it at was so accessible for so many people that we had to cap it. We had to cap our numbers because we're only X amount of chefs in the kitchen, and we're like, we just can't do 300. We can only do X amount. And yeah, but it's good fun cooking rustic food. It was almost like cooking staff meal every day, but put it into takeaway containers and trying to get it out there, which was it's good. It kind of it boosted the kitchen a little bit, and everybody had their go, and try different things, and we all worked things out together, and came to an end result, and just kind of went, right, what do we go from here? Oh, okay, let's start packaging. And then yeah, it really took off at first. And I think once everybody started to reopen slowly in Queensland, it kind of just died out. But there are still a good handful of people that still want it. There's still people out there are pretty concerned with the situation that we're in and don't really want to come out to restaurants, and that's totally understandable. It's that older demographic that I was talking about that are a bit concerned of what's going on.
You made a name for yourself with the Bentley Group, but then you ventured off to do your own thing. Uh, what led you to Burley Heads?
Well, it was actually it was when I was working at Monopole. I met my wife Carla through she was working at the time for Crew Media, the PR agency. She was actually doing the PR for Monopole, and we were living about 100 meters from each other on Maclay Street in Potts Point, and yeah, once we got together, that relationship obviously built, and I've actually lived and worked on the coast from when I was about a first year apprentice, and I did that for 2 years, and then I worked in a French bistro, and it really, really that was the best restaurant at the time, and I'm talking back then when you probably couldn't get a decent coffee around the coast, and there wasn't really much. So, yeah, for us, obviously having Carla's background in PR and myself as a chef, we love to travel and eat, and for us it was a no-brainer. Owning our own restaurant was, we kind of just looked at each other and said we need to do this for ourselves one day, and yeah, Carla lived on the coast and went to school here, so she's got a whole bunch of friends. But we every time we came up, we saw a gap in the market for just a really good solid restaurant, and it didn't really have to be at a high level. And I think, yeah, there was just a good handful of people that we knew that were traveling to Melbourne or traveling to Brisbane, and nothing really on the coast. And I think Burley's one of those locations where it's a little hub in itself, and it was just I think to us at the time it was just asking for something that was half decent, and there are a good handful of restaurants in Burley, but I think our what we offer was yeah, it's quite unique, and it was different. It's a little bit different. Some people put it as a typical Sydney restaurant, but yeah, I mean, for us, it was a whole bunch of things that kind of led us to here, and having that sea change was super important. But yeah, we kind of from the minute we met in Monopole, we kind of said to ourselves, yeah, we need to change, and something needs to happen. But yeah, we looked at this option, and we looked at Sydney as well, and for us, it was just a bigger picture, and where we saw ourselves in about the 10-year plan, and we dove straight into it and just said Burley's the mark, and we just got to go for it.
Can you tell us a bit about your food? What is your style of cooking? And it's springtime now. What sort of food is on the menu?
At the moment, a lot of citrus at the moment. It's funny you ask that question. A lot of people approach us at the door and say, "What kind of a cuisine are you?" And it's hard to pinpoint exactly what we are. I mean, we always say modern Australian, but then people are like, "Modern Australian? What's that?" you know, expecting that we're going to have wallaby and kangaroo and just some real wacky stuff. But we always we keep things super simple here at Labart. We're very seasonal. Currently we have asparagus has just popped in. We've got loads of citrus, broad beans, ballotti beans. I think are just on the way out. Colette. So we're really trying to work with simple ingredients and just make delicious food. When we first started off, we were a la carte only, and we are doing. I think our first approach was definitely that share style, kind of what I guess what Monopole was, and just interesting flavors with interesting techniques. But it's slowly has progressed to where we are now, from seven course menu. But we're still very true to what we do in terms of simplicity. Our cooking here at Labart is very technical driven, but our presentation and what we put on the plate is very approachable to the customer. Which for me, I think it's super important because we kind of have this thing at the bar where we say, the customers always come first and then the wine and food come after. So we don't really have that expectation of people coming here and saying we're just here for the food and the chef. For us, it's an overall experience what we're trying to deliver. And yeah, at the end of the day, I always say to my staff in brief, without any customers, there's no restaurant. So it's super important that not only do they get a good feed and drink awesome wine, that the delivery of our service has to be on point as well. And people just have to come here and have a good time and feel like they've had a good experience, which is what we do. But the food remains, like I said, extremely simple, very seasonal, and yeah, food that people can relate to and still have that little tweak of interesting in it.
You mentioned that you did your apprenticeship on the coast. What led you to a career as a chef?
At the time, I was in Sydney, and I was doing a whole bunch of jobs really here and there, and just trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. But it was my oldest brother is a chef, and at the time he approached me, and I was living by myself in Petersham at the time, and I always just enjoyed having people over, and coming from that South American background, we would always have family get-togethers on the weekend, and things like that were really important to us. And seafood is a massive thing in the family, and a lot of Chilean barbecues or asados is like a weekly tradition, and loads of meat. So those kind of memories for me is always embedded in my head. And I grew up in Western Sydney, so from a young age, mum would go shopping in Cabramatta for meat and do her vegetables something else. So it was very multicultural, and I think that's where I've got that that drive to kind of step into where I am in terms of a chef. I think it was that family kind of what I grew up with, and what my parents have taught me as a kid, and how to eat has kind of led me to be where I am now. But initially, it was my brother. He kind of just said, he's like, start cooking. You'll love the lifestyle. It's good party life, and probably not the best advice, but he's like, it's good morale. You work in a team. He goes, I reckon you thrive in it. And my first job was at the Art Gallery of New South Wales at the restaurant.
Oh, wow.
That was where I first kicked off. Yeah, and now it's completely changed. But I remember just stepping into there, and I walked in with my buttons, my chef buttons, the wrong way, and my jacket was inside out, and just basic stuff like making mayonnaise, and I would completely stuff that up. But I did the functions at nighttime, and that just was a serious buzz for me. And kind of when someone gives you a task and you have to complete it, it's just like it's overwhelming. Everybody's just running around and kind of trying to get their head around things, and yeah, it instantly just clicked with me, and I thought to myself, okay, I'm really going to start taking this serious. And then yeah, then I had two family members that moved up to Queensland about 20 years ago, and we're a tight knit family, so I just moved up. But my brother said there's a really good French bistro called Champagne Brasserie that you need to get your hands on and try to get in there. And it was a really good starting point for me, because it was the basics, coq au vin and beef bourguignon and confit duck and rillettes and pates, and it was the real base of cooking. And I think that shows in my cooking now. And it's funny that we've come back to Burleigh, and here I am open up what people describe it as a Parisian style slash New York restaurant in the middle of Burleigh. So people come in here and they're like, we don't even feel like we're in Burleigh anymore. And our restaurant overlooks a car park, which is horrendous, but once you're in here, it kind of transports you somewhere else. And I think that's pretty cool, because I still have that drive of as an apprentice working at that French bistro, which has then replicated into my cooking now. And I think it's just super important to have a good base of whatever cuisine it is. For me, on a personal level, it's great to mentor the chefs that come through here to get their bases down pat, because a lot of my chefs have either worked in hotels or resorts. So to put them in this environment, for me to give them the tools to actually go, right, this is how you probably have to do things, it's massively rewarding. And I think there needs to be a little bit more of that in order to keep our industry going, because this is just a stepping stone for them to come in here and then go, right, I want to move to Melbourne. Yeah, sure, go work here. This is a great place to work, and you can better yourself. So yeah, I really tell my chefs that this is kind of a location to use as a stepping stone and get your basics down and just become a solid cook. And then from there, you can kind of grow. But yeah, that was the start of my cooking. And then I think after that, I went back to Sydney and kind of just in my head said, right, I need to start putting myself in like the best restaurants I can. I think at the time, Mark just got the free hats, and I happened to walk in and just randomly, I was like, I spoke to Pasi and I was like, can I have a job? And he's like, come back tomorrow, with that the Finnish accent. He's like, come back tomorrow. And then, yeah, he's like, come back tomorrow. He's like, okay, we'll give you a go. But I got the job somehow. And for me, after that, everything changed. My whole philosophy and my thoughts on cooking went to a different level. And I was just, absolutely buzzing. And I think that was a big impact in my life. And I learned some serious cooking there, and it's probably one of the hardest kitchens I've worked in. That and the Bentley, but yeah, it was so cool. And yeah, I think if it wasn't for my brother trying to just nudge me and say, go do an apprenticeship, which was incredibly hard back then. I think I was earning about $180 a week and trying to live in Petersham by myself. And at one point I was like, I can't afford this. I had to go out west, and then trying to get out west. Once you miss your 12 o'clock, train to Strathfield, it's like 3 buses after that. So I would get home at like 4 in the morning, sleep for like until 7, and then get another train back. And it's like a constant battle for a year. It's just like, oh, I miss my train. And back then the metro, or the I think the closest was Parramatta to get you out there. And now it's a bit more I think they've pulled their finger out, and it's more accessible. But back then it wasn't. I think a couple of times I had to call my dad. I'm like, Dad, there's no buses. Can you come and get me in Strathfield? And Dad's like, what are you talking about? Like, I've got to get up at 6 o'clock to go to work. But yeah, I can easily say that it's paid off, and a lot of hard work. But yeah, it's been pretty cool.
Your brother got you started or interested in the industry, but your family always had these feasts and gatherings, as you mentioned, and you grew up with your mum's cooking. What dishes stand out from those days?
Oh, yeah. I think winter in Chile is a real big thing. For us, we use a lot of chickpeas and a lot of pork and a lot of lentils. But my mum makes this soup called. I'm a real big soup person, and it's quite sad because Carla's not a soup person. So every time I'm like, let's go out for a ramen, she's like, oh, I'll just get a gyoza. I'm like, oh, that's not cool, is it? But my mum makes this beef, like a beef brisket stew. And it's very much just super basic, just overcooked beef into a stock with heaps of vegetables. And it's this Chilean hot sauce that they use called Belde, which is put a dollop of that in it, and it's just like starts to sing in your mouth. And that's things that I definitely grew up with mum. Mum makes empanadas from scratch, and wood fired empanadas. Yeah. And these are all flavors that I knew from a young age. Even going to Cabramatta at like the age of 5, like we'll just go eat a bowl of rice or whatever, and just stop and eat. And then it's just exposed to so much back then. And it's really, that was really cool. But yeah, mum has some awesome dishes. She's got this other one called lenteja, which is like a lentil stew with shaved parmesan, which is probably not Chilean at all with the parmesan element, but it's got this like real banging pork chop on top of it. And the stew's just cooked out in the pork stock, which is extremely comforting. And then you have your street foods, obviously. There's this Chilean hot dog that's you know called the completo. It's kind of like avocado, sauerkraut, and I think it's that German influence that has arrived to Chile that has got that sauerkraut in there. But yeah, our weekends as a family were spent, you know, on over charcoal and cooking loads of meat, which is, by the end of it, you got your meat sweats and potato salad and cabbage salad. And yeah, just I think just your basics. And that was very very comforting. And we don't see each other as much as we do back then than we do now. But we definitely when we get together, we love cooking up a feast. So that's pretty cool.
Do the food influences from those days sneak onto the menus that you create now in the restaurant at all?
Yeah, no, I've had a lot of South American friends ask me if some dishes kind of give them a bit of memory, some sense of memory in terms of their childhood that come into the restaurant, and there are a few elements that I put together in terms of sauces and dishes that kind of are not, but we try to make that flavor combination come through. Mum was making this cake through the lockdown when we're doing takeaway. So it's like crispy layer biscuits with, caramelized dulce de leche and then shredded coconut. And you kind of repeat the process. And it's called 1,000 layers, but it's so sweet. Like you have a slice and you just unless you don't have a sweet tooth like I don't, it's just so sweet. But it's extremely delicious, and that's made it onto the menu and has become something that um, has been extremely simple. And it's actually just an anglaise of dulce de leche and coconut sorbet. And I think my mum came in with my brother and they sat down and had a meal, and I didn't tell them about it until they got to the end. I was just watching them take that first spoon in their mouth, and I think Mum even started crying. She's like, how did he get this to taste like the cake?" And I was like, that was a pretty cool moment because to have your mum in your restaurant that you worked so hard for, share a tear over something so simple was really nice to see. And it's still, I think we're actually making changes to get it off now, but that was something that was pretty special. And yeah, there are little things like that we do put on the menu that it's stuck, it's embedded in me. And why not? If it's delicious, then put it on.
You brought a new level of dining to the area, and then you had to change to takeaway, and then you've changed back to a restaurant. Will what you offer change moving forward as a result of this pandemic?
Not necessarily. I think we're extremely comfortable where we are at the moment with the restaurant. Yes, we have eliminated some tables, and obviously, the dynamic of having more people in our space is, it's not a great business model when you lose half your seating. But we went from doing a la carte to trying to do two and a half seatings for summer to doing one seating now, and people are really jumping on board the fact that we're giving them a little bit more attention. So the set menu has offered us has really given the diner a better experience, and it's just given us a bit more of a direction in terms of what we're offering for people. And I think that's it really shows, and it's quite important because our staff have a better lifestyle. And at the moment we're only operating Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Sunday is just a lunch. So we're really trying to compact everybody into this smaller dining space and dining time during the end of the weekend, where it's really been beneficial for everyone. The staff are getting their appropriate hours, and the chefs get to spend more time at home with their wives and their kids. And Carla and I can concentrate on our personal life, and possibly look at the next thing. And it's just a real eye opener that why were we working so hard? And I think that's part of the reason why we moved up to the coast. It was to get away from that real grind of trying to do long hours and not have that work-life balance. Um, but now the restriction with the restaurant, it's like the 1.5 meter in between tables has kind of looking around, and everybody's chilled out and really enjoying their time without having to be kicked out for that next dining. And people have looked at Labart as a more experienced kind of um, celebration kind of restaurant. So we kind of have taken that on board and said, okay, maybe we don't have to go back to doing 80 covers on the weekend, and kind of just really you know just charge a little bit more, and make it more of an experience for people to eat at Labart. But I think it's really worked in our favor. So I don't think from where we are now, once hopefully things get back to normal, I definitely feel that we'll probably keep our same structure.
At the top of the show, we talked briefly about the borders reopening between New South Wales and Queensland. How important will that be for the state moving into summer and businesses like yours?
Massively. I mean, the amount of tourism that gets generated up here through Christmas and the summer period is massive, and it's a bread and butter for a lot of restaurants and cafes and bars and hotels and whatnot. So to have people come over, hopefully it's only a matter of time that Sydney people can kind of come up as well. But yeah, it's only beneficial for everybody, especially moving people going from Byron Bay to Brisbane. The dining scene is just exploding at the moment. So there's so much good quality restaurants that I think having those borders open will definitely get us through this busy period, and hopefully keep us going for the next winter, which is what people really rely on. Living up here, and I definitely feel that it's going to be a massive boost to just not only good for restaurants and bars and whatnot, but to just generate some money for the economy, especially up here, it will be huge, yeah, massively.
A lot of our guests have talked about this period of time has been good to reflect on some of the issues and some of the opportunities. What's it been like for you personally? Is there some positives to come out of this time for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think the positive, especially for Carla and I, on a personal level, yeah, for us, it's quite important that we continue that work-life balance. Right at the start of COVID, we were really trying hard for a family, and Carla had unfortunate miscarriage, and that was such a heavy blow for us. And for us, really, it's just kind of trying to just keep as much positive as possible. It's just beneficial for everybody, the staff, ourselves. Yeah, it's just it's real positive just to keep going forward and just seeing what we get out of it.
You said a bit earlier that it might also give you space to do something else. Empanadas are my weakness. Is that something that might be in your future?
No, no, unless Mum wants a job, but she's retired. Um, no, definitely not. I've unfortunately to say, but look, you never say never. I think there is a lot of potential for growth up here, and yeah, for us, I think there is there is something possibly on the works down the track, but it's a long way away. I mean, we're only 2 years into Labart, and I wouldn't say I want to get I don't want to get greedy too quickly. And there are some awesome businesses up here doing good things, and we're just happy to be a part of it. But yeah, I mean, something else down the track would be nice, but. We have so many ideas that we just don't know which one to actually pick and say, right, let's hone in on that and go for it. So yeah, I think down the track there will definitely, you never know, empanadas selling, asado barbecues, but no, there's definitely room for growth, and definitely some things in the woodworks for us to do. So fingers crossed that it all works out and we're heading that direction.
Well, Alex, it's always good to catch up. We've loved having you on Deep in the Weeds. Keep in touch, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for having us on. Appreciate it.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of Australia's hospo community, suppliers and producers in search of hope during this pandemic. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.